Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to the Savvy Seniors Living Seminar Series. I want to just give a big air hug to all of our groupies. This is a series that has been going on since 2017, month after month. I'm Dana Wilson. I am with Keller Williams Realty East Bay. And I am a seniors real estate specialist and certified senior housing professional. And I saw the need to share with the 65 plus folks in our communities and their family members and caregivers information and strategies and solutions in regards to all things senior housing related. And so we started out hosting these at the Lafayette Library, and we just are hoping that we can get back together in person next year. But for now, we have gone virtual, and we're welcoming you to our second to last Zoom webinar for 2020. So with that, I am going to just have a couple of our let me just make sure that we've got everybody here that I think we're here. I am going to let a couple of our panelists introduce themselves real quick before we get started. And we've got Dale Martin. So go ahead and unmute yourself, Dale, and tell us who you are.
My name is Dale Martin. I'm with a company called Live Home. We are a national geriatric care management and caregiving services company. I'm the branch manager, executive director for the office in Walnut Creek, servicing Contra Costa County, Alameda County, and Solano County. And we have offices from Solano County to San Diego. Thank you.
And Dale is one of our wonderful sponsors. Tammy Joe, where are you? Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Tammy Jo Borowski. I don't know why my picture's not showing, but sorry. So I own Clear Organizing. We are professional organizers and move managers. I have a staff of 12, and we help people decide what furniture they're taking to their new place. We help box everything. We coordinate moving companies. And in one day, we coordinate the move and the unpack. We hang art, we make beds. We get your new place all set up to make it feel like home right away. And then we also can work in your house that you're leaving and help clear everything out so it's ready to get ready for the market. So Clear Organizing, give us a call anytime.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And with that, let's see here. All right. Okay, folks. So I just want to give a shout out. Tammy and Dale are two of our sponsors, and without our sponsors, this series would not be possible. So just to shout out, Annalise, who's actually one of our speakers today, is our platinum sponsor for 2020. We also have the Heritage Downtown, Jenny Shively. You met Tammy Jo, you met Dale Martin. Tammy Jo's with Clear Organizing and Move Management. Dale Martin, Live Home, in-home care. We've got Oakmont of Concord and Montecito, Assisted Living. They're wonderful sponsors. Atria, we've got Atria Valley View, Walnut Creek, and Lafayette. And they've been sponsors since the beginning. Mutual of Omaha Mortgage, Marty Apple and Martha Eccles, and Horizon Elder Law and Estate Planning, Julie Fiedler. So with that, we're just going to jump into things right now and talk about our topic today, which is the family love letter, communicating with your adult children. So it can be said that failing to plan is really planning to fail. And as we have learned earlier this year, and many of you have already completed their estate planning including wills and estate plans. We've had a little extra time to get our things in order. But after completing this, there's still a lot to be considered, right? And to address. And we have a disclaimer that none of us are allowed to give, tax or legal advice. We're not licensed to do so. But we do have some wonderful speakers today that are going to really share some very informative and helpful information. And I'll start out by asking Annalise to introduce herself, what she does, and what we're going to be talking about today.
Thanks so much, Dana. Hi there. My name is Annalise Morris, and I am a certified financial planner with Merrill Lynch Wealth Management here in Walnut Creek. And I was introduced to this, I want to say 2 years ago, through Dan Hart. And, just being in my business, I am exposed to a lot of different information, a lot of different trainings of that sort. And I have to say, single-handedly, this is probably the most impactful, just planning tool and also topic that I introduce and I chat with my client families with. A lot of my clients, they're multi-generational families, and we can do the best job planning, but if some of the fine details aren't worked out ahead of time, things can go, very sideways, unfortunately. So I just think that this brings a great framework on how to approach a very uncomfortable, very difficult topic. It makes it easy. It makes it easy to kind of organize all of your important information, have it in one spot, and then give some really good logistical talking points of how to have that conversation. And, through doing this and incorporating into my practice with my clients, one thing that I've really learned is it's not a unilateral conversation. It's not always, the parents having this conversation with children, but at times it can also be, children approaching their parents and saying, hey, we really want to become more organized and have a better understanding of, X, Y, and Z, and approaching them. And when we take the time to do this, as Dana mentioned in the intro, a lot of times some of the problems or discord that can result within families is oftentimes sidestepped. So I was introduced to this by Dan Hart with Neuberger Berman, which is an asset management company that has a great partnership with Merrill Lynch as well as myself. And then his subject matter expert, Cherie Brooks. So I'm going to let Dan introduce himself, say a few words, and then he can go on and introduce Cherie. Thanks so much.
Annalise. Great. Dan.
Thank you, guys, and good morning to everybody on the line. Thank you for having us on, Dana. Honored to be here. And Annalise, thank you for the partnership. What I'm going to do is just briefly introduce, and then as Annalise mentioned, Cherie is the subject matter expert here. So I'll be on mute for the rest of this call and let Cherie do what she does. But just by way of background, Neuberger Berman, we're an asset management firm, so we do partner with Merrill on the asset management side, and that's how I've gotten to know Annalise. So our day-to-day is about investments and managing money. But today's discussion is really bigger picture than that, right? This is about estate planning, and really 3 things to know about today's presentation or discussion, and 3 things I'd like you guys to walk away with. Number 1, the estate planning discussion is broad and can be overwhelming. The family love letter is a tool that's been put together so you have a comprehensive roadmap to start to think about it. It's not easy, right? This is a long process, but it does simplify things. So that really, number 1, this is a bit of a workshop to introduce you to a tool that should be comprehensive. Number 2, and Dana, thank you for the disclaimer at the beginning. We are not tax experts. That's not what today's about, right? Estate planning can be about death, taxes, and paperwork, and there certainly is an element of that. But today's really about what is the legacy that you're going to leave behind for your loved ones? Is it a legacy of clarity, right? And how can you inject your voice into that legacy? And Cherie, in normal times, would be traveling the country, having these discussions in large scale formats, all the way down to one-on-one family consultation. That discussion's different for every family, but through storytelling today, hopefully we can unearth and get the wheels spinning on some thoughts there. And then number 3, and Dana, just to be clear, we cannot record the family love letter content or repost it, but we will be sending follow-up packets so you guys can engage with that in a follow-up format after the call. And, we're accessible through Annalise and through Dana for anybody on the line who wants the follow-up information. We will be able to provide that, but it cannot be recorded. So with that, I'll introduce Sherry Brooks, and I think we're going to do this as an interview format, Dana. So I'll hand it back to you guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, just to remind you, we are recording this right now, right? So we're just going to jump in. And I was very attracted to this topic because when I'm dealing with clients and their family members, sometimes having the conversations, guiding them to have the conversations with each other is, it's very emotional. And I'm always on my soapbox saying, have a short and long-term plan. And, part of what I do is trying to help them have a roadmap. And this just tees up perfectly with all that I believe in and I'm trying to do and help my clients do, because I've got an older parent too. And so this is what my friends and I talk about when we go on our walks and get together. So Sherry, why don't we have you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you're going to be talking about. I think you're going to be walking us through this love letter with some stories.
I am. This material is really meant to be a roadmap of organization, as Dan alluded to, and Annalise and Dana. It is an overwhelming process, and I like to start by just asking everyone, as we start to think through our own situation, I often give some perspective by saying, how many of you have a junk drawer somewhere in your home? And I know it sounds a little bit unprofessional to some degree on the financial side, but we're really moving from Wall Street to Main Street to be where we live every day. And I share that because I have parents, they've been married 54 years now this past month. My dad just turned 80, and growing up in the Midwest, I remember as a kid, they would always say, if we were looking for something, I don't know, check the junk drawer for the bike key or whatever. And so we laugh in our family that once we try to move mom and dad, we're going to find lots of stuff, some real treasures, along with lots of keys. And I share that because imagine someone coming in to find a specific document, especially during today's times, when we've seen the pandemic over the last 7-8 months take over. Imagine someone coming in to find a safe deposit box key because they need a healthcare directive or they need a power of attorney, and they're not sure exactly where that information is, and the possibility of it being in a safe deposit box. Do you know where the key is? If you find the key, maybe it's buried in a junk drawer, maybe it's not. Would you know though, when you find it, what bank and what branch? And those are the type of things, and just to kind of set the stage, that we're being very real today to say our lives are complicated. The longer we live, the wider and deeper the paper trail and the cyber trail. And so this is a step toward getting your arms around and communicating within your family and with your professionals where things are. So that's really one perspective. And I'd like to start with just sharing a story, because I want you thinking about, okay, if I had to find a key, would I know where it is? Typically, if we were in person, we'd get some feedback, but 9 times out of 10, people are challenged to have things where they need them in the complexities of today's lives. Oftentimes we're taking care of older parents or children, our careers. So I'd like to start with a story that I think lends itself across generations. And that's, imagine I was working with an estate attorney not too long ago out in New Jersey. And he shared a very simple story, but very profound in the way that we live our lives today. He was working with a client. They've been longtime clients of his. Mom and dad moved to Florida, snowbirds from New Jersey. The adult children stayed in New Jersey. In this case, mom passed away first. So mom passes away in Florida, and the 3 adult children say, Dad, we're going to move you back up to New Jersey to be near family. So they do that. They move dad back up to New Jersey. 27 months after they move their father, he passes away. They find the box of information where dad said, if anything happens, this is where everything's at. And they found a life insurance policy for $500,000. Did not know that dad had this particular policy, or mom. There's one problem with it though. And 9 times out of 10, the audience will say a beneficiary was missing or beneficiary was mom. Those certainly could cause some issues. But in this case, the premiums were left unpaid. Small bank account in Florida, when they moved dad from his home in Florida after mom passed away back to New Jersey, they consolidated his finances and shut down the small bank account in Florida that was set up to auto debit the premiums. As a result of that, there was a lapse. Dad had Alzheimer's to add to the complexities. And the last several months of his life, he had wanted to go through, or several years of his life, he had wanted to go through all the information, but never got around to it. So as a result, I share that story because this really had to do with a paper trail or a cyber trail. We are so encouraged today as families, from multiple institutions just across the board to go paperless, and we get that congratulatory email, thank you for going paperless. That's all good and great, but in this case, if no one knows where those bills are being paid from and how to maintain them, it could be very costly. So bottom line for this story is, this had nothing to do with investments. It had nothing to do with something going south, but this family lost $500,000 of insurance proceeds, again, not to investments, but simply to a cyber trail or paper trail that they didn't know to look for and to pay those premiums. So imagine calling the insurance company and saying, 42 years mom and dad paid on this policy, 27-month lapse. Can we work something out? And unfortunately, the answer is no. So I hope those 2 scenarios really set the stage for where we are today across the country, just in Main Street, living our daily lives and how complicated things can be.
Wow, Sherry. Well, and by the way, yes, I have 2 junk drawers here. And who knows what's in them? I don't know. But we grew up with junk drawers too, and we find all sorts of treasures in there, right?
Yes.
So my question is, how did the love letter, the family love letter, how did it originate?
So the love letter originated really as a result of an estate attorney who lost his father. And that was really the foundation of the book. So Jeff Scroggin was the estate attorney. He lost his dad over 2 decades ago. So this has been something that has been in the making. And as a result of him losing his father, he recognized he didn't have everything in order. And he actually had his siblings fly in. He was the executor, obviously, for the estate. And the document they were missing, particularly for his dad, was the military burial documents to bury his dad at Arlington. Jeff was embarrassed. He said, gosh, if I don't have my house in order for my father, my clients must be struggling, because I do this for a living. So it's the old cobbler's kids with no shoes. And he started to tear apart his father's home as his sisters made alternative arrangements, only to find the DD-214 buried in a random book on a shelf in their dad's study. And so that's something that could have ended up with Goodwill or just donated in some capacity. And so he recognized how much more there is than just the legal and financial side. And that was the start of the booklet.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
that was the foundation.
What about examples of items that we should think about including? What's important to include in this?
Well, I think if I can share a slide here, I think when you get the booklet, the booklet ties in all of the hardcore information that we know we need. Wills, trust, DD 214s if you're in the military, healthcare directives, powers of attorney, adoption papers, and so forth. It's just really, first of all, what's relevant to your family. And that's really the source of what this is. And I'm going to just share, if I could.
You should be able to have that ability, but something, there you go.
Is that working? So this page, when you get the booklet, I think this is probably the most relevant page that starts any discussion, whether it's with loved ones or other professionals. This is page 23 in the booklet. And the reason I bubble this up, it's about 2/3 of the way through the booklet, but it's a great springboard. And to your point, Dana, it lists on the left-hand side those documents that you need to consider. And there's really 3 questions here. What's relevant to your family? Because not everything will be relevant. And then on the far right-hand side, I love this because it says location of original. And when we have sat down with clients, sometimes they say, oh, that's in my safe deposit box, or that is in my file drawer on the right-hand side. And then they get down a little further and they say, I have no idea where that document is. It's buried in a box from our last move. And that's really the type of things you want to bubble up to have a much richer discussion. Where are the important documents? And then in the middle, when were they last updated? A will or a trust or a document that's 15, 20 years old is not going to serve your family well. Life happens. These documents should be updated or touched at least every 2 to 3 years, or if there is a life event. So the opportunity on this particular page to just start on page 23, and then it filters throughout the booklet, gives you a great springboard for a discussion between a husband and a wife or up and down generations. But most importantly, to incorporate your professional. You know, we work closely with the folks at Merrill Lynch, and Elise has been a strong partner, but having that third party there to just have a starting point to say where things are and how can we get this discussion going and what steps do we need to take. And also for referrals for, I'm sure Dana and Annalise, you both have amazing referrals for multiple challenging, whether it's legal or accounting or whatnot. So this page would be the starting point for the booklet.
Awesome. Okay. And what's a great way to organize everything? I mean, do we just stick it all in the little folder?
Well, let me also share one other piece, because you asked what else was in it, and I don't want it to seem too dry because there's so much more to it. This is a basic starting point. The other piece that is the emotional aspects that are often forgotten. It's that priceless conversation that we sometimes forget to have with a loved one. So I'll share with you, page 35 is the ethical will. And it just lists some questions to experience. And I've had clients share with me that they've actually had, during COVID, their grandkids call them over Zoom and do a recorded session and ask them things like, what are the values and traditions we want to make sure are continued in our family? And what are some of the most important things you've done in your life? So this can be just a really strong page to have those priceless records or history made for your family. The latter part of the book gets into ethical will, family mission statement, and what your desires are. you also asked, Dana, what else is in the book? There's fun stuff in the book too, like frequent flyer miles. We aren't really thinking about them during COVID, nor are we thinking about hotel points, but those are an asset for your family. Those are something that you want to make sure if you pass away or become incapacitated, that someone else can take that European vacation. So that's in here. There's information about pets. Oftentimes our pets, especially if we're widowed or single, we found clients that set up pet trusts to take care of their pets. So there's really a wealth of information in here that allows you to start the family conversation. And then to go to what you just asked, Dana, on the organization. So there's a number of different ways that you can organize this information. The booklet itself is not a legal document. We often encourage clients to really use it as Dan mentioned, to be a roadmap. What does that mean? When you open the booklet, as you start looking at different, as it goes through all the various parts, you might want to say, you know, see red file, right-hand drawer, all passwords. See safe deposit box, call my tax attorney, whoever is the one that's actually putting this together. It's an opportunity to create that roadmap. Oftentimes, we have clients that put statements in here. Maybe they turn it into a binder. But however you do it, often we are so digital today that oftentimes we have clients that actually type up their own Excel spreadsheet or Word document to complement. The booklet just gives them ideas to what needs to be put together. But in terms of actually storing it and keeping it, many older folks, and I would say baby boomers like my parents, they rely heavily on the safe deposit box, which is all good and great as long as the bank is open. But I would share with you that even during the pandemic, where we've seen bank hours change, the importance, especially for all of you out in California, of having something at hand that you can get to 24/7 in a fireproof, waterproof safe, seems to be where many families are going today. In fact, I think there was a run on Amazon for families ordering a safe to be delivered to their door in the spring, just for that sense of security. So whatever you do, be cognizant of identity theft, be cognizant of who knows the information, and most importantly, make sure you have a good financial professional that's helping you navigate through this process.
That's awesome. And is there anything else you want to share on your screen for now?
I think we're good.
Okay.
Share with you that in the kit, you'll also receive as a follow-up is just a one-page life events. This ties in, Dana, to what you're doing with your clients every day. And certainly Annalise, you as well. But the changes in the family, life events create that change within the family. And to be aware and to complement what I said earlier, when do you update this information? Every 2 to 3 years, or if there is a life event. And this shows marriage, birth, divorce, but also maybe a parent moving in with an adult child or an adult child moving home after college. Any of those changes, the sale of a property, any type of change creates a change within your documents. So just be aware of it. And so this is an additional tool that's in the kit. And with
That's
that,
awesome. I mean, that's awesome. And that is why people call us when life happens, right? And so many changes going on. I see boomers and betters realizing now that they've been at home for so long that they don't need such a large home, that they're really spending most of their time in 3 or 4 rooms. I'm also seeing our younger home buyers, they're having a mass exodus from the cities. They've lived in their cool flats. Now they have 1.25 children, and they need to readjust their housing now to adapt to more home office space, give space also, designated space in their homes for children to study, right? Because a lot of kids are schooling from home. And there's also a huge interest in more indoor outdoor living space. Just again, we need more space because we're living more hours of each day at home. So I think this all plays into that plan and your housing and what's important to you, and then sharing that with your loved ones. Now I'll switch over to some of the things that this brought up for me as you were going through this, Sherry, and things that I have seen with working with clients is, for instance, we are preparing to list a home for sale. And I had a darling couple. He was 92 and his beautiful bride was 87. And we were preparing their home for sale, and they were working with a move manager, and we were just doing some of the pre-prep work. And part of that is pulling a preliminary pre-sale title report. And Annalise and I were talking about this the other day, that caused quite a challenge for the title company, because upon reviewing that, we noticed that there was an old lien on the property. It was a private loan, and we started having to dig for that information because the title has to have a clear title report to pass to the new buyer of the property. Well, the person that had written up the loan was passed away. The financial institution had closed, so it was quite a challenge, and they didn't have any of their records. So this would have been a perfect opportunity for them to have it organized and in one spot. And both of their adult daughters were trying to help them through all this as well, and gather all the records and make sure we had everything we needed to successfully get them moved from point A to point B. And I think you mentioned it, Annalise, where having everything organized, this eliminates some of the family discord and confusion. I think you mentioned that already, that circles around changes when a crisis comes up, untimely deaths, capacity issues, etc. So now that we've identified what it is, how do we have this tricky conversation? Who wants to handle that one? Sherry, is that something you want to discuss? How do we begin that conversation with our trusted advisor?
Well, in terms of beginning it with your trusted advisor, everything should be on the table. If you don't have a financial advisor, and a team of professionals, I should say, an advisor with your state attorney, with your tax consultant, you really need that communication and that small office type of approach. We don't work with every financial advisor across the country. We only work with some of the best, and Annalise at Merrill is one of the best. If you have an advisor and you are considering some changes, don't hesitate to get a second opinion. But it's important to have that right professional in place. So in terms of the conversation with your professionals, everything should be on the table. And the reason being is because of what you mentioned earlier, change takes place and the impact it could have. Getting the conversation started with parents is sometimes a challenge, to say the least, or parents with their children. So much depends on the family dynamics. Sometimes the parents, I had one couple in their late 70s who shared with me that they actually pulled their kids together at the lake house for one of their birthdays and said, all on the table, this is a family discussion, we're all going to spend the weekend together, and part of the weekend includes, for my gift for my birthday, Mom said, we're going to discuss, you know, what our wishes are. And the kids didn't really like, oh, mom, you know, we don't want to talk about dying. But the mom and the dad had agreed that this discussion needed to take place. So that's one approach. So much depends on the dynamics. Other parents may be a little more close to the vest. It's important that, if anything, your adult children know what your health requests are, because sometimes that's the best way to start the conversation. If something happens, mom or dad, share with us how you want things handled. How can we step into your home and keep things running? If you just need some additional therapy, maybe you're in physical therapy for, you know, a couple months after a fall. We've seen families where their electricity was shut off simply because the kids didn't know where stuff was being paid from. And so the importance of just handling it from the health aspect, I think, is the first way to go.
That's
Annalise,
awesome.
what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree. And I think a lot of times just calling for a family meeting, and, you know, due to COVID and just kind of this uncertain environment we've been in for most of 2020 so far, it's actually been a really good time to kind of just level set and, you know, put it out there, have that conversation, and then with time on our hands and spending so much time at home, you know, kind of getting everything organized. A lot of my clients will leverage me, and they, you know, just in conversation, you know, this is some of the stuff that keeps them up at night the most. And, you know, how can we have that conversation with our kids? And, or, you know, as I said earlier, it could be the kids being freaked out about the uncertainty and not knowing what could happen with mom and dad, especially. You know, I know we talked a lot earlier about what happens if someone passes away, but I think almost as big of an issue that we see is, what if mom and dad start cognitively declining, and we need to kind of step in and take over some of the financial aspects of their life. You know, Dana probably can attest to having to sell the house and moving them into another home or assisted living. So, I mean, they utilize me a lot. So that's one strategy. Or, you know, if you want to handle it yourself, I think just calling for a family meeting and getting everyone together. And if that's virtual in this world that we're living in, that's effective as well.
Yeah. Well, and we know that, you know, change, at least in my case, when people are getting ready to move their home, it's a physical and an emotional challenge. And I think Sherry mentioned it, that sometimes this is more challenging for the adult children than it is for their older parent. And I think there is a need, I've learned and seen that there's a need on the part of the parent to want to have all their ducks in a row. Most parents, because they want to make sure that their wishes are met and followed. And I think that if kids and parents can all get on the same page with the help of something like the family love letter, it just eases the burden. It's going to ease the confusion. You know, we all have enough stress in our lives. And I think just knowing that this is all taken care of and updated, and everyone is singing off the same sheet, so to speak, then we don't have to guess what our mom and or dad's intentions were. I think, you know, there's been studies done asking parents, you know, will your kids know what your intentions are if something were to happen to you? Oh, yeah. Johnny Jr., he'll know what to do. But then when they turned and asked the adult children, do you think you know what your mom and or dad, you know, wants to have happen if something were to occur? Their answers did not match mom and dad's, which is interesting. So there is a need, if nothing else, hopefully a takeaway from today is to spur you on to having a conversation with your loved ones. and to just have an open, honest talk, because you're there to support one another. You love each other, and you want to help, but to have the uncertainty of how are we going to know what to do and where is everything located, I think that's huge. I'm working through this right now with my own mother. And oh, it's in the top drawer. We got to look in the top drawer and it's not there. So it's sort of like a little treasure hunt. And we're doing it now so that we don't have to do it later. And we hope there is never a crisis. But this is all really good stuff. So I know there are also actually family therapists and such that focus on this kind of thing, the family dynamics and working through all these conversations. And it's funny, sometimes talking about money is harder. What have you found, Sherry, Annalise, Dan? Talking about money is harder than talking about a lot of other subjects. Why is that?
Absolutely. I think it's somewhat taboo. You know, we've kind of been raised to be a little bit clandestine about that. So I think that's part of it. And then, you know, every family is very unique and has their own intricacies to it in the relationships. And one, in what you're just mentioning, it kind of brought back a story that happened a few years back. A client of mine, he has 3 adult daughters. And, you know, obviously that can be a little bit more problematic for certain reasons. And in this case, they ran into a little bit of an issue when their mom passed away. And, you know, who was going to get mom's jewelry? And so it became a little bit of an issue between the 3 of them. They were able to kind of settle things, and thank goodness, you know, dad was there and lucid and able to help kind of referee. But, you know, that's something that might not be like in your family, for instance, Dana, that might not be an issue for you because you have a brother. You know, I don't know, it could be, but those are just certain things we run into. And one thing, just kind of doing this in the past, that's worked very well is if you write out, going back to what Sherry was mentioning on that ethical will, writing a letter to your children. And if maybe you don't want to have that conversation and it's a little too difficult to think about a day that you're not here and who's going to be, you know, wearing your wedding ring when you're, you know, no longer with us, that can be really difficult for people. So if you wanted to write a letter and, you know, draft it to your family and kind of account for what your wishes are, that usually tends to work really well in sidestepping any kind of infighting. Because how do you argue with a letter that your mom wrote, you know, stipulating that these are what her intentions were? So that's
Yeah.
another good way to approach it.
Then you're getting away from, well, he said, well, she said, well, no, she told me, and no, she said this. So, and now I've got another workbook that I think a lot of our viewers and attendees are familiar with because we've had it around over the years, but it's the 5 steps to a successful move. But part of it is guiding someone on how to write that family letter. And it's reminding them that we're not asking our children for their opinions necessarily or permission, surely, but also sharing your intentions, that you've done the research, you know what you want, how you want things to go. You want to be able to share and be the captain of your own ship and share, you know, what you want to have happen when, which trusted advisors you want to be working with, who's going to be there to help, who do you want involved, you know, the what, the where, the when, the why, and the how. Also, we have a list where you may want to consider, maybe this should be part of the family love letter, is make a list of the treasured items. And typically I have found, as we're going through people's things in their home and helping them liquidate some of the things they're not going to take with them or keep or give to their family and friends, but things that we're liquidating and distributing, we're potentially donating, maybe they're going to auction, what have you. But make a list of those treasured items. Typically they're sentimental items, and write out a list, say who you would like to have it, but give a little history of it. So in our home, the joke is, it's not a joke really, but you know, we've got my grandmother's butter churning dish that she brought over on the ship from Sweden. And that's the thing, it's like nobody really wants it, but we will never be able to throw it away because it's so precious and it's one of a kind and it's part of our heritage and it's part of our grandma. And you know, just those things that if she had said maybe in writing, you know, I want Dana to have the butter dish, you know, it just alleviates issues, I think, down the road. So Annalise or Sherry, in addition to the financial documents, and then we're talking about maybe how to share where you want some of the things to go. What else? You mentioned some like logins and passwords. Anything else that we need to be adding to this?
Well,
Or an additional legal documents that would be important?
everything that you mentioned in terms of the sentimental things is also in there.
Good.
Dana. So it's often it's those items that rip families apart. Sometimes the money is an easy divide and it's the sentimental. I actually had an attorney that's shared with me not too long ago here in Chicago that she had a family that was fighting on Facebook over 6 items. And they had a $4 million estate, and that was divided equally between the 4 adult children, and they were fighting over a bread bowl that was great grandfather's. So similar to the story you mentioned, it can be quite a challenge, especially when you're racking up legal bills trying to settle the estate. So that information is in there. Obviously an addendum would be needed, but to personalize it and share the history behind it. The other pieces of information that are in there tie into the information that you need, but all your important contacts, your doctors, your real estate agent, your financial advisor, your tax consultant. You know, I know when my grandfather had dementia, the last several years of his life, we were struggling to piece together his doctors, who they were, and the medication he was taking. And so that's all in there. And it really forces you to just think through an inventory of what's needed. So I'm not sure if I'm answering your question or not. I know we went in a couple different directions, but there's pretty much all the hardcore information we know we need with the softer aspects of what your wishes are. The more that can be done in the front end, the better. And we really call the family love letter a gift. And the reason I share that is because I now have a clear understanding of what we mean by that. And when we originally introduced it to the marketplace several years ago, it was like, okay, this is a gift. This is a gift for the family. It's a legacy. But I had a colleague of mine who lost her mom, or I'm sorry, lost her father. And she had worked with her siblings and her mom and dad for 2 years prior to that, pulling together all of their information in the family love letter, just putting together a huge binder, if you will, both digital and hard copy of where everything is, what his wishes were. And the reason I share that is because in the last few weeks of his life, she was there with her family, and I called to check on her and said, "How are you doing?" And she said, "Oh my gosh, Sherry, these have been the richest weeks of our lives. We have laughed, we have cried, we have shared movies and pictures and stories with my dad, my mom, who is soon to be a widow, and my siblings and I. Everything was done. Everything was taken care of. His military, everything had already been discussed. No one was searching for documents or trying to sell a home, or, you know, everything was set. And so that's the gift. That's really the gift to the family. And so to the extent that you can do that, it really leaves a tremendous legacy for your family. And even if it's uncomfortable, having that third party, I just want to reiterate what Annalise said. Having a third party expert or professional in the discussion, we have seen makes things go much smoother because they remove the emotional aspects. They are trying to think of the other implications that could come into play and keep harmony. So I would definitely leverage your professionals to keep and maybe it's a therapist. Annalise would probably say she's often a family therapist for clients, but that's part of money, and that's part of planning, and that's part of, you know, what happens. So definitely I would leverage having, even though you think everybody's going to play well in the sandbox, sometimes they don't.
I have a question. How do you, what guidance or suggestions might you share with the people listening today on how to account for the family members that are not on the same page? I mean, we're talking about maybe a counselor, third party, anything else, any other ideas? I mean, what if that third party just doesn't want to play, you know, doesn't want to participate, but they're part of the overall picture? Anything else we can recommend to folks? Because it's a real thing. You know, we don't all have, you know, Leave It to Beaver families.
I'll take this one, Dana. So
Great.
I think it's really important, as we've talked about many times during this presentation, to, you know, address some of this discord before anything happens. And I think that that can alleviate a lot of problems. You know, once again, if the bad apple in the family, or whomever we want to call them, they know kind of what the expectation is ahead of time, I think that will alleviate a little bit of that. But then, you know, unfortunately, and I've seen this happen many times, I think that is the time when you do leverage the professional and you get the attorney involved, and you have the attorney, the estate planning attorney, you know, help out with that trust distribution process. That can be really helpful, especially if there's a lot of, you know, bad family history. It can be, you know, money really well spent and prevent a big lawsuit down the road.
And then is there anything else we want to cover as far as how we can use this family love letter with current or updated planning documents like our will and our trust? Seems like it goes hand in hand with it.
So I actually have a copy of the family love letter, so give people an idea of what it actually looks like. And I mentioned in the chat box, if anybody wants a copy or wants to go through this planning exercise, please reach out to Dana with your address and how we can get this to you. That's very easy for us to take care of. But I think just, you know, going through it, accounting for what's important to you. Certain families are going to have different things that are important to them or relevant to them. But I think that's kind of the next, you know, best step after this presentation. And then feel free to leverage us, you know, you're a subject matter expert here, Dana. You know, most people, their house is a very large asset of theirs. Their, you know, bank accounts, their investment accounts are also another large asset. So kind of accounting for those two things.
Yeah. And I like the way Sherry admitted that a lot of us like paper. We want to have something physical that we can hold on to and see, and maybe put in our fireproof, you know, safe at home. Do you suggest that most people also maybe scan the documents and put it on a thumb drive or something as well, just in case?
Yeah, absolutely. And Meryl has an amazing digital drive, and Annalise, you can speak to this for scanning and security purposes. Having your professional have your documents so that it's not, you may scan it on your home drive, but it's just that added protection. And so to me, that's a comfort. So I would mention that. Also, if you're interested in getting a digital copy of the family love letter, there are thumb drives available, and Annalise can direct you to those. They're actually on familyloveletter.com. It's a one-time use where it's per family, but the idea is to be encrypted and have security. But either way, however you do it, whether it's hard copy or digital or a combination, whatever your comfort level is, and sometimes it's age related, I would just say do it and just make sure it's secure, and certainly have your professionals involved as a backup for your family.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Okay, well, and I think you touched on this already, but medical POA or healthcare directive, that should just be part of this as well.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all on that one page I mentioned. Yeah.
Perfect. Is there anything I have failed to ask any of you today that would be pertinent to this? Something that we would definitely want to make sure we add to, or someone we want to get involved in this process? And like, how do we start? I mean, should the parents start? Obviously, it sounds like the parents should start. But really, all of us at any age, if we're the adult children, we need this for ourselves. And I see that people my age, we're the boomers. So, you know, I still have kids in their 20s and a mom that's almost 90. That I see the need for this because my mom doesn't have it all together. And we're having to deal with that. And I don't want to have to make my children do that because it's a lot of work. So any final like tips, tricks?
Dana,
things-
I'll just share a quick anecdote as an adult child. I'm
Okay,
married.
Dan, let it go.
So-
Let her rip.
We're just putting the household together, and my dad's been clandestine is a good word. You know, he keeps everything close to the chest and
Private.
private. He's not ready to share that stuff with us yet, but I did send him the family love letter as well as to two of my aunts who unfortunately lost their husbands. So two of my uncles had passed away, and they were able to get some of the information down prior to my uncle's passing. And my dad went through and did at least a skeleton version of the family love letter. So I'm in a position where, you know, he's not ready to open that up and have that discussion yet, but at least the information exists and it's in one place, and it'll serve as a framework for the discussion later on. And then the other thing is we do these events in person a lot. And I noticed one of the demographics, if you will, that get a lot out of the event are the adult children in their 50s and 60s with parents in their 80s and 90s, scribbling furiously as Sherry speaks because they're going through it in real time and they did not prepare. Right. So your style and how you go about this is going to be specific to every family. But I think doing it when, you know, you're not forced to is going to give people the time to really think through it and hopefully provide some comfort. So that's an anecdote from the adult child in the room.
No, that's awesome. And I think Sherry touched on that too. So this is great. You mentioned something really important, Dan, which is start this before and when you don't have to. You know, take your time, maybe take baby steps, maybe even give yourself some homework once a month or once a quarter. I mean, just, you know, slowly ease into it, chew on it a little bit. But then Sherry, I think, started out by saying, you know, this is a gift. And we're coming up on the holidays, people. So what a great gift, especially this weird year when we, you know, family, friends, we all, I think a lot of us realize what's really important, right? And it is our family and our loved ones. And so what a great opportunity to do this and to, yeah, whether you're doing it in person, whether you're doing it socially distanced in the same room or on Zoom, you know, give this gift to yourselves and start to work through this. And like Sherry said, this could be a really meaningful time together. And you will start to share stories. And you might even learn things about one another that you didn't know before. And I think there's a need for our parents to share, you know, what their values are and what is important to them and the legacy they want to leave. That's a big deal, I think, to all of us, but I think more so as we get a little older. So with that, I'm going to just see if there's any questions in our chat box. We've got some people interested in learning more about it. So I don't know if there's any other questions you want to ask any of our panelists. Go ahead and type it in the Q&A. Let's see. So thank you, Linda. Linda is mentioning that my mother-in-law lost everything in the Paradise fire, and then her husband passed. So they had to rebuild all of this information before, or they will have to rebuild it all before she passes. And so she's just reminding all of us it's important to have one copy off site. That's a really good point. for sure. That would not be fun to have to reinvent all that. All right, well, with that, oh, wait, let's see. Anything else? Same question as above. I'm not seeing what the question is. Oh, maybe where do we get the family love letter? If you're interested, just email me and I will make sure you get in touch with Annalise. And again, I'm Dana Wilson. My best email is dana@day-realestate.com. And as always, we will send a follow-up email to everyone with all of our contact information. So not to worry about that. We'll make sure that everybody that wants a copy gets a copy. And I think this is just, again, going to be a great place to start if you haven't started working through this already, and a great time of the year to do that. So I just can't thank Dan and Sherry and Annalise enough for their time and their wisdom, their energy, sharing all about the family love letter. I think it's important. So I thank you for everything that you spoke about today. And let me just see, where can we get a copy of the booklet? Okay, people are still asking. Just we'll you know what? We will follow up in the follow-up email and make sure you know how to get a copy of the booklet. So with that, we will sign off for now and just keep posted. Next month's will be December 2nd. There may be a topic change, so stay tuned for that. And we're a little late, but we're working through and almost have finalized our topics for 2021. So hang in there. We'll get those to you. And those will all be posted if you go to my website under the Savvy Seniors tab. We'll have all of the future webinar topics posted for you all to check out and register for one, all, whichever look intriguing to you. So with that, I wish everyone a wonderful November. Happy Turkey Day. Be well, be safe, be healthy and happy, and have a great day. Thank you all.